Kuvarat Majal Pada Murjai Vayanto. Twaya Murchika Bhakti Pajal. We're singing at verse when we chant the Damodar prayers. The Damodar prayers are full of paradox. First of all, you begin Namamiswaram Satchidanandarupa Lasa Kundalam Gokule Bhajash. You're offering your obeisances, Namo Iswaram, to the Supreme Controller. But here, that Supreme Controller is a little boy. But this little boy doesn't have an ordinary material body. Satchidananda Rupa. His form is composed of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. The first thing necessary when approaching the Damodar prayers and thinking of Krishna's Damodar Leela is to understand that he is the Supreme Controller. Yet, because of love for his devotees, he has childhood pastimes, so that devotees can love him as their child. Because many devotees want to relate to the Supreme Absolute Truth in that way. Yes, he is the Supreme Absolute Truth, but he's running in fear of Mother Yashoda, who's chasing him with a stick in her hand. So how can this be? Fear itself is afraid of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yet, here you see Krishna, Bal Gopal, running in fear of Mother Yashoda's chastisement. And she apprehends him from behind, just like you catch an ordinary criminal. How could she catch him? Lord Brahma says, the greatest yogis who can travel at the speed of mind can't even approach the tips of the toes of Govinda. So how is it that Mother Yashoda apprehended the child Krishna when he's running away from her? She caught him from behind. Why is Krishna fearful? What does Krishna have to be afraid of? But he's acting that way to increase the love of his devotees. He's enjoying this relationship of being a child dependent on his mother. Then when we consider the two sons of Kuvera, Manigriva and Nalakuva, they were bound by the order of Narada Muni. You may think that Narada Muni may have lost his temper by cursing the two sons of Kuvera. You may think that Narada Muni did them wrongly or very severely. But actually, what Narada Muni did is described as a combination, curse, blessing. He saw that these two demigod boys, sons of Kuvera, the treasure of the heavenly planets, he saw they had become so proud of their opulence. They were associates of Lord Shiva, sporting in the gardens of the heavenly planets. They had become so proud that they were mad. They couldn't even understand that they were naked. They were sporting naked in the river, drunk with young girls. And they were so covered over that they didn't understand their undress state. So as you know, when Narada Muni was walking by, the girls hurried to cover up. But the two boys thought nothing of it. They were so out of it. Was it by chance that Narada Muni appeared? Actually, nothing is by chance, because it is the Lord's arrangement of the universe that devotees are here, there, and everywhere, and somehow or other, one day you'll cross the path of a devotee. So it seems like chance that Narada Muni happens along, but actually it is the purposeful plan of Krishna that devotees are throughout the universe, and one lifetime or another, it may take hundreds or millions of lifetimes, but at some point you'll cross the path of a devotee. So indeed, the two sons of Kuvera crossed the path of Narada Muni. Of course, they were in such a degraded condition. So Narada Muni thought that they become so mad, they can't understand that they're naked. Their consciousness is gone. So they might as well be trees. Trees stand naked for such a long time. And they're so dull in consciousness that they don't feel any pain when they're cut. So let these two boys stand as trees for 100 years of the demigod time. 6 months of earth time equals 1 day for a demigod. So again, this may seem very cruel. But Narada Muni added 2 blessings to the curse. The 2 sons would be able to keep their consciousness. They would be able to remember their sinful activities and why they're suffering in tree bodies. And secondly, they would be free from their tree bodies by the Supreme Personality of God Himself. They would see Him face to face. So, what do you say? Is this horrible or is this very good? But would you like to be cursed as a tree? Oh, you're saying it's all right for the 2 sons of Kuvera, but... So what happened when the 100 years was up and these 2 Yamalarjun trees, the bodies of Nalakuva and Mani, what happened? Krishna is bound to the mortar for grinding spices. Little Krishna sees the Yamalarjun trees and decides, my mother's bound me to the mortar. I still have more mischief to do. And he began to walk slowly toward the 2 trees, dragging the grinding mortar that he was bound to. He knew these trees are actually the sons of Kuvera. But Krishna says, he said, I'm not interested in these demigod boys. I'm not interested in these rich boys. They're just sons of Kuvera, enjoyers, materialists. But I am interested in the truthfulness of the words of Narada Muni. Because my devotee, Narada Muni, made the arrangement and said it would come to pass, that I would free them, Nalakuva and Maniguva, from their tree bodies. And they would see me face to face. Simply because my devotee, Narada Muni, has said this. Therefore, I'm interested in the situation. But as for direct interest in these two rich demigod boys, no, not interested at all. That shows you that Krishna is self-sufficient. He has everything. He only is interested in the love of his devotees. Therefore, he wanted to uphold the truthfulness of his dear devotee, Narada Muni's words. But Krishna doesn't need anything. Self-sufficiency means that Krishna can fulfill all of his desires himself. Duryodhana found this out. You may remember. Duryodhana had given a lunch invitation to Krishna. This was before the Battle of Kurukshetra. And he did it as a formality. He didn't like Krishna. But the way this material world works, there are complications. So Krishna's son had married Duryodhana's daughter. So, those of you from India, you know how marriages can make things complicated. Marriages bring mother-in-laws, marriages bring relatives that you may not care for, but you have to pretend that you do. So, Krishna's son had married Duryodhana's daughter. So as a formality, as a relationship thing, Duryodhana extended a lunch invitation to Krishna. But Krishna didn't go. What happened? Although Krishna had no invitation to the house of Vidura, and Vidura wasn't wealthy at all. Comparatively, Vidura was poor. Yet, Krishna rushed to his house without an invitation to lunch. And Vidura and his wife were so happy to see Krishna. And whatever they had for lunch, they were offering to Krishna. So there were some bananas. So Vidura's wife was peeling the bananas. But in her ecstasy, she and her husband were feeding Krishna the banana peels and throwing away the insides. And Krishna was eating the banana peels. Because the banana peels were offered in pure love. This is the power of pure bhakti. This is how Krishna is conquered. Because of the prema, the pure love of Vidura, Krishna accepted his lunch offering, even though materially it was faulty. So this shows you what actually is fault and what is correctness. Pure love is what decides faultiness or correctness. You can just see Krishna eating the banana peels happily because they're offered by his pure devotees of pure love. You can just see Vidura's wife throwing away the inside of the banana, serving Krishna the peels. What happened then? The next day, Duryodhana said to Krishna, "What happened? You never showed up for lunch." Try to understand that lunch with Duryodhana meant like, a huge catering event. Like at an Indian marriage or something in India, Hundreds of preparations, this, that. Duryodhana had a huge kitchen staff. Everything was served in opulence, but Krishna didn't go. So Duryodhana said, "Well, what's happening? We're related. I gave you lunch invitation. You never came." So Krishna said, there are 2 points here. Number one, in order to eat, someone needs to be hungry. I wasn't hungry. Why should Krishna be hungry in an ordinary way? He's the source of everything. He contains everything. Om Purnamada Purnamidam. He's perfect and complete. He's not hungry in the ordinary way. He simply tastes his devotees' love. Patram pushpam palam toyam yome bhakta priyakshati. He says in Bhagavad Gita, if you offer me a leaf, fruit, flower, water, I'll accept it if there's bhakti. Okay, leaf, fruit, water, you eat or drink. What about a flower? How do you eat a flower? That's Krishna letting you know that if your offering is filled with bhakti, then in ecstasy I'll even eat a flower if you offer it. So Krishna was explaining to Duryodhana. Point number one, I didn't come to your lunch invitation because I wasn't hungry. And point number two, even though someone is not hungry, they will still eat if there's affection. If there's affection in the offering. And then Krishna told him, you don't have any affection for me, so. Evidently, Duryodhana didn't contest the point. For Duryodhana, everything is political, diplomatic maneuvers, you know. But Krishna told him, I wasn't hungry, and there was no affection, so for these two reasons, I didn't come to lunch with you. You went to the door. So, in the case of Manigriva and Nalakura, as we said, directly, Krishna was not interested in them. But because of Narada Muni had said, these boys would be delivered by Krishna. Krishna wanted to uphold the truthfulness of Narada Muni's words. So he knocked down the two Yamalarjun trees, and out jumped these effulgent beings, brilliant as fire. And they began to offer prayers to Krishna. In the process of their offering prayers to Krishna, they declared, let us always be the servant of your servants, especially let us be the servant of Narada Muni. They're expressing their gratitude. Now just think, if someone had cursed you to be in a tree body for 100 years, the time of the demigods, would you thank them later? But that's the realization of Nalakuva and Manigriva. They thanked Krishna for the mercy of Narada Muni. Let us always remain his servant as we are servant of the servants. So they're showing you, you don't try to approach Krishna directly. You approach Krishna through his devotee. Bhaktivedanta Thakur always explains that. Krishna se tomar, Krishna dite par. Krishna, you're the property of your devotee. Therefore I'm running, not after you directly, but I'm running after the devotee as I shout, Krishna, Krishna. And Narottam Das Thakur says, Choriya Vaishnava Seva Nishta Payacheke. Who do you know who's ever become free from material existence without the mercy of a devotee? So Nalakuva and Manigriva upheld that point and declared their gratitude to Narada Muni. He did the right thing to us by apparently cursing us. He cured our madness. So that makes you think, do we really want to get over our madness? How attached we are to our bad qualities. It takes some years of purification and bhakti before we really understand how much of a devotee we are not. In the beginning, you think, okay, I have my kuti mala, my neck beads on. I'm fingering my japa beads. I'm putting something in the hundi. I'm doing automatic monthly bank transfers. I must be a devotee. But as the years go by, we start to understand that to be a devotee, to be a Vaishnava, is something very special. So special that for a pure Vaishnava, Krishna says, I come under the control of that devotee. So this is why, as Krishna was approaching the Yamalarjun trees, before he knocked them down, this is why Krishna was smiling. Little Krishna was smiling to himself. What was he thinking? Here I am, about to set free these two demigod boys from their tree bodies. But look at me, I'm bound. What am I bound by? I'm bound by the gopis' love. I'm bound by the love of my devotees. Yet, the bound is about to set someone free. This is the paradox. Tvaya mochita, bhakti bhaja kutaucha. So Krishna was remarking that to himself. How paradoxical, how ironic. And then he knocked the trees down, and Nalakuva and Manigriva appeared. In that same way, the Damodar prayer asks, Krishna, you please free me from illusion and give me your praying, give me your pure love. So we have to think to ourselves, how much do we really want to be free from material existence? Or do we simply want our bhakti to supplement our material development? Are we thinking material development is the most important thing, and then bhakti will be supplementary, augmented, a corollary? We need to understand what is real wealth. So in this freeing of the sons of Kuvera, Manigriva and Nalakuva, you see what is real auspiciousness. They dismissed their punishment in the tree body. That's not the point. The point is, we got the mercy of Narada Muni. And we're seeing you face to face. We're seeing the Supreme Absolute Truth. Thank you, Narada Muni. Would we be so grateful? How many of you have ever thanked, for example, if you had good parents who tried to raise you correctly, how many of you ever thanked your parents for punishing you? Okay? So just see, even on the material platform, we are unappreciative. Or is it that all of you were so good that you never punished? I remember as a little boy, how old was I? I must have been 9 years old. So I didn't do my homework for school. And so the school teacher, if you don't do your homework, she would write a note to your parents. And your parents have to sign it so to acknowledge they saw it. And then you bring it back next day to the teacher. I don't know if teachers still do that in public schools these days. They probably don't care so much. But at that time, 1958 or something in New York City, the teachers were very diligent. They really cared. At that time, I was telling Bhagavad Gita. The 50s in New York City, neighborhoods were very strong. Neighbors cared for each other's children. Everyone looked out for each other. It's not like that now, of course. So anyway, the teacher said, okay, you didn't do your homework. Take this note home and have it signed by your parents. So I had a clever idea. I had the same name as my father and as my grandfather. So I signed the note myself. brought the note back the next morning to the school teacher. Of course, she took one look at it, and you can see it's a child's handwriting. So she called me up. Did you sign this note yourself? And I had to admit, yes. So then, she wrote on the note, the same note, she wrote to my father, "Your son has forged your signature." Now you have to understand that my father was an administrator in the New York City Police Department. His son is coming home from school, his 9-year-old son, 8-year-old, whatever, is coming home with a note saying that I forged his signature. You know, to someone in law enforcement or justice, just seeing that word forgery. It's criminal activity. So my father looked at the note. He said to my mother, "You know what to do." So she went into their room, came out with one of my father's belts, took me to the living room, told me, "Drop my trousers," and she went to work. Meanwhile, one of the neighborhood men, happened to be wanting to visit my father while my mother is and the neighbor turns to my mother, "What did he do? What did he do?" She told him, "He forged his father's signature." The neighbor said, "Go on, beat him, beat him, beat him." And the neighbor said, "He'll never forget this." And it's true, I never forgot it. And 54, 55 years later, I still haven't thanked my mother for it. So, we're not very grateful persons. That's the nature of being in the material world. We're not very grateful. We take everything for granted. We don't appreciate how Krishna is maintaining us. We always want more, we're greedy. We always feel unfulfilled, unsatisfied. So many desires we think we have that haven't been met yet. We don't try to understand how Krishna is giving us the best. We have the opportunity to take up devotional service and please Krishna. This is the rarest opportunity in existence. This is not simply a religious belief. We don't have simply an opportunity to believe a particular religious way. We have an opportunity to engage in Krishna's service. There's nothing more rare in all of existence. A real devotee is a grateful person. We're so thankful we have an opportunity to engage our senses in the service of the master of the senses. Yesterday in Perth, I was speaking about the devotee in Chaitanya Lila, Kolavecha Sridhar. How many of you know that pastime? He was externally very poor, but Lord Chaitanya kept insisting, "You're a wealthy man. You're hiding your wealth from me." He was so poor. He lived in a tiny hut with holes in the roof, and he wore rags. How did he maintain his existence? Barely. By selling parts of banana trees, banana bark for cups, parts of banana flowers. That's how he maintained himself, very barely. And even with that bare income, he would spend 50% worshiping the Ganga. Now, Kolavecha Sridhar had a reputation throughout Navadvip of only charging the real price for his goods. You know how it's like in India. Merchants never tell you the real price. But Kolavecha Sridhar would always charge the real price, and so everyone knew that, and no one would try to bargain with it. No one would try to beat him down, because they knew. He's saying what the actual price is, the worthy price. So everyone just, whatever Kolavecha Sridhar charged for his banana tree products, they would pay. Everyone except Nimai Pandit. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Nimai Pandit, would come by and just start taking whatever merchandise he wanted. And then he would simply leave half the price that Kolavecha Sridhar asked for. He would leave half the real price. And Kolavecha Sridhar would be struggling with Nimai Pandit. Sometimes he would be even shoving and pushing him. Please, please, give me the real price. And Nimai Pandit would argue back. Every day it went on like that. Sometimes Lord Chaitanya would give Kolavecha Sridhar some hints about his divinity. He would tell Kolavecha Sridhar, you're spending money worshipping the Ganga. Don't you know I'm the father of the Ganga? So day after day they would have loving exchanges like that. And Lord Chaitanya would tell him, why are you acting like you're poor? You've got so much wealth. I know, you've got so much wealth. So one day, Lord Chaitanya decided to prove his point. In other words, to make it obvious. He decided he was going to drink water from Kolavecha Sridhar's water pot. Now, Kolavecha Sridhar's water pot, it was practically just holes. Iron water pot with holes everywhere. It was rusty and full of holes. So Lord Chaitanya and his band of devotees approached Kolavecha Sridhar's house, little tiny hut, if you want to call it a house. In Mayapur, you'll still find the spot where his house was. So Lord Chaitanya saw there's a little bit of water left in that water pot, a little bit of water that hasn't leaked out in all the holes. Still some water there. So he began to drink that little bit of water left that hadn't leaked out of the water pot. Of course, Kolavecha Sridhar was horrified because Lord Chaitanya is taking his remnants. And from such a decrepit, rusty, broken water pot. But as Lord Chaitanya drank the water, he just broke out into ecstasy. In this way, he began to explain to Kolavecha Sridhar, you have the real wealth. And all the devotees could understand that by Lord Chaitanya's drinking from his broken water pot. They could understand that Kolavecha Sridhar, regardless of his external situation, has the unlimited wealth of bhakti. When Lord Chaitanya was revealing various transcendental forms to all the devotees, fulfilling their desires in the house of Srivas Thakur, he called for Kolavecha Sridhar. And he told Kolavecha Sridhar, I want to give you a benediction. I will offer you all 8 mystic yoga perfections. The Ashtak. You've read about those 8 mystic perfections in nectar devotion. Become lighter than the lightest, bigger than the biggest, reach to any planet, grab what you like, on and on like that. Well, what was Kulavecha Sridhar's answer? He said, I don't want mystic powers, not even mystic perfections. Here's what I want. You know that Lord who would always steal my banana cups? Eternally, I want to be his servant. That is bhakti. In this way, Kulavecha Sridhar showed what is real wealth. We want that wealth of devotional service in our life. That is our aspiration. So the temple community is an opportunity to get the rarest jewel of devotional service, somehow or other, this way or that way. If we can offer some service to Krishna, our life is prosperous. So we have to change our conception of what is real wealth. You can be a billionaire in terms of financial evaluation, but from the spiritual point of view, you can be completely poverty-stricken. So what is the use of material wealth that comes and goes so quickly? Just doing a little service for Krishna, even a simple service for Krishna, brings you spiritual prosperity that you can't calculate. So this has to be experienced, this has to be realized. Otherwise we're going to be a little hesitant about interacting with Krishna. We will be a little fearful that Krishna will take something away from us that we're very attached to. But by engaging in Krishna's service, we begin to understand that our real attachment is for pleasing Krishna. To become attached to pleasing someone. Just think about that. You all have experience in the material world of when you became attached to pleasing some material person. Whether parents or a child or spouse, romantic partner. And you remember how at first it's very pleasing, but after a while the excitement, the pleasure fades and everything becomes routine and mechanical. So we have a fear that devotional service will be like that. If we become attached to giving pleasure to Krishna, gradually the experience will fade, it will diminish. And we'll be left with nothing. We won't have spiritual enhancement and we won't have material enhancement. Can you see how you might have that fear? You'll lose both ways. That fear is there in us. That paranoia is there. If I substantially try to please Krishna, suppose that activity of pleasing Krishna loses its flavor, then where will I be? I will have neglected my material prospects for pleasure, and the spiritual activities of giving pleasure to Krishna no longer give me fulfillment, so I have nothing. We have this fear. So how to overcome that fear? Very important for you to understand how to get over the hump. This is why we need the association of enthusiastic devotees. When we surround ourselves with enthusiastic devotees, we can see what is up ahead for us. And we become confident. So if you want to increase your bhakti, look for devotees who are selfless and enthusiastic in their service to Krishna. And they'll get you over the hump. They'll get you off the mental platform in which we're wondering, worrying, if I give everything to Krishna, or not everything, but if I give something to Krishna, what will happen to me? You see, our mentality is that it's okay to believe in Krishna. That should be done by everyone. Everyone should believe in Krishna. But to give substantial things to Krishna, that's a bit of a worry. And why should you give substantially to Krishna? Doesn't he already have everything? Isn't that our philosophy? So this fear slows down our devotional progress. So we should recognize it's there, and in the association of devotees, we can visualize the spiritual advancement that's up ahead for us. And of course, if we acquire knowledge of Krishna, we start to understand Krishna's activities as Bhakta Vatsala, the exchanger of loving affection with his devotees. Nanda Maharaj understood, not Krishna as God, but he understood that Krishna was exchanging love with Mother Yashoda. That's why he was so-called acting naughty. It was just his way of exchanging love. She was feeding him, and then she put him down to tend to the milk that was overboiling at the stove. And so Krishna became angry. He bit his lips. And he broke butter pots and distributed contents to the monkeys. And so then Mother Yashoda, as you know, tied him up to the grinding mortar. At first she was tying him up to punish him. But then she thought, he's already afraid sufficiently. In other words, I don't think he's going to do this mischief again. But he may be too afraid. He may just run off into the forest. Therefore, I have to bind him, just to keep him from running away out of fear. So Nanda Maharaj, when he and the cowherd man ran to the spot where the Yamalarjun trees had crashed, because they heard this huge sound, two crashing great trees. So all the older cowherd men and Nanda Maharaj ran to the spot. There were already a few little cowherd boys there. And they were claiming, Krishna did this, Krishna did this. But the older cowherd men, they couldn't believe that. Little Krishna, how could he knock down these two huge trees? What was on the mind of the older cowherd men? They were just concerned that little Krishna could have been killed by these two crashing huge trees. That was the first thought in their mind. And then you have these little cowherd boys saying, he knocked them down, Krishna knocked them down. Cowherd men couldn't accept that. But then some of them thought, well, it has been predicted this child would have powers like Narayan. Maybe it could be possible. So while everyone was speculating like that, Nanda Maharaj comes and unties Krishna from the trees. That was the first priority on his mind. Not trying to understand, is Krishna God or not, but let me untie my little boy. So Nanda Maharaj was thinking, what's happening with Mother Yashoda, my wife? Why has she done this to our little boy? Doesn't she understand that little Krishna was just trying to exchange love with her? That was Nanda Maharaj's thought. In our own devotional life, yes, we need to see how Krishna is beginning to exchange love with us. Sometimes we need the help of devotees to see Krishna's hand in our life. When we encounter some reversal, when we encounter some loss, some setback, to see how that situation can lead to more bhakti. That requires help. Otherwise, without that help, we'll resent Krishna. But with the help of devotees, we'll be able to appreciate any situation, because we'll be able to see how whatever we went through leads to more Krishna consciousness. That's how extraordinary bhakti is. All right, any questions? No questions. Yes.
Hare Krishna. I just think I'm kind of a new devotee, and I've got a house full of books and DVDs and CDs stacked up to the ceiling. And I'm unemployed, basically unemployed at this point in time. Very easily go to Camberwell Market and sell. It'll probably be a really good idea after I just mentioned that. What do you reckon?
Well, let's analyze the situation.
Okay.
How much lasting fulfillment have all those books and DVDs given you?
Not a great deal. The music sits there, and there's some great music there.
When you say great music, it uplifts you to the highest heights.
At times it does.
What are those highest heights that it uplifts you to?
Okay, like if you can listen to somebody singing about love, and you can hear somebody singing about... Sometimes I'll go home, I'll put something on, and it's something that makes me remember that I'm susceptible to all this stuff, you know, everything around me, and I'm just like...
Okay, you say some of the music makes you remember love. Well, what can you describe that love that the music is talking about?
Love that makes me feel as though I'm alive, like really alive, not kind of like...
What does the song say?
In a city life, in a city pressure.
City life and city pressure?
Take it off of me. I won't let go of your love. Something like that, you know, just at certain times.
That really uplifts you to the highest.
Well,
in city life, in city pressure, I won't let go of your love.
But you know, sometimes you wake up in the morning.
But don't you know that in city life and in city pressure, you've got to work for that love?
I'll go to the market and I'll sell everything.
Are you chanting Hare Krishna?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
That is the best music.
Okay. Okay.
I know, because when I was, how old was I? 21, 22. I had back then everything was phonograph album, you know, records. No CDs or cassettes or that. Everything was record albums. I had like a 450, 500 album collection. I was a music connoisseur. But one day I got a record album with the Hare Krishna mantra on it, the Govinda prayers. And I played it, and I recognized that this is not from the material point of view, this is not the best music I've heard, but there's something special about it I've never heard before. So after that, I never listened to any of my 500 record albums again. So I had a top class stereo system, because I was a connoisseur. And everyone, my family, all my relatives knew that my stereo system was the best. Because during my university days, I was a nighttime DJ on FM radio. I had to shift from 11 p.m. to 2 in the morning. Yeah, right, when all the creatures of the night were up, you know. The Bhagavad Gita says what's night for the materialist is day for the spiritualist, and so on. So, the kind of persons who were up from 11 to 2 were those who started to wake up at 10 o'clock at night and stay up all night. So anyway, my point is that I had this world-class record collection, and I had the best stereo system. So my family knew something is very wrong when suddenly I said to my cousin, I'll sell you my stereo system for $150. My father was like, what's going on here? Of course, my cousin gleefully jumped on the deal and he bought my stereo system. Even to this day, 40 years later, he still talks about it. That was a great stereo system. I don't know why you sold it to me, but I wasn't going to ask too many questions. But that was the last thing I had to do before moving into the Brahmacharya ashram. It was my ticket to freedom. So, just as I've done, you can do also. You may not end up in the Brahmacharya ashram, but still, you'll be much better off by hearing the music of the Hare Krishna mantra. So clear out all those other music things so you can concentrate on the divine music.
Yeah.
That's what I did. So I recommend the same for you. You'll feel so much better. Your life will improve. Because I often explain at universities when I'm speaking, sound vibration makes you the kind of person you are. You can judge a person by the sound vibration that goes in their ear. So if you free yourself from that material sound vibration and increase your connection to spiritual sound vibration, your life will become successful. Leave yourself open for the Krishna sound. Any other questions? Yes?
Hare Krishna. You mentioned earlier that it's by nature of this material world we are not very grateful beings. We don't realize how lucky we are in the situation we're in. So could you please advise how we can develop that sense of gratitude and see Krishna's hand in everything?
Here's something I try to do. Whenever I meet someone who's done anything, big or small, that helped me in my Krishna consciousness, I always thank them, even 40 years later. I always try to thank that person. And that way, you increase the scope of Krishna's service, because by your thanking that person will be inspired to do more. And also by your thanking the person, you'll become more inspired because you've shown gratitude for someone trying to help you in your devotional progress. And of course, there are different levels of gratitude. I often explain that to feel indebted is not, from the material point of view, a good feeling. To know that you're in debt to someone. You don't like to be in debt financially. You don't like to be in debt emotionally also. Kali Yuga puts a premium on false independence. I'm free. I can do what I like. No one can tell me what to do. I don't have to do what anyone says. That's Kali Yuga happiness. Whereas bhakti is all about indebtedness. You feel indebted to Krishna and his devotees, and you're proud of that. You're happy. Oh, Krishna, I owe your devotees a debt that I can never repay. Just like when people go to the uni and they take out loans. I know in Australia, New Zealand, take out these loans to study at the university. Sometimes you take 25 years to pay them back. Of course, in India, you take out loans there so you can go study in Australia. So loans are a very crushing thing. But to feel indebted to the parampara, to feel indebted to our spiritual master, that is freedom. The more we realize our indebtedness, the more we advance in bhakti. It's a paradox. Again, the more we realize we have a debt that can never be paid back, the more free we are. That's what the sons of Kuvera said to Krishna. We are eternally indebted to Narada Muni. We are the servants of Narada Muni. Look what he's done for us. But even in our daily dealings, it's good to show gratitude. I was with one of Grihastha couples in the Melbourne Mahaprabhu Mandir community today, and I mentioned to the wife, your husband has lost so much weight. Doesn't he look handsome? She said, oh, he's always handsome. I said, that's very smart. Very smart. You know? I explained that generally ladies, they rarely say anything complimentary about their husbands when the husbands are present. Because they want the husband to always feel that he's always underneath the mark and has to try hard. Right? The ladies, right? You know how to do that, right? Always let him feel that he's inadequate. He hasn't done everything completely right. He can always do better. Yeah. So many ladies have told me that. No, I never compliment him in public to his face because then he'll think that everything is okay. I want him to try harder. But this wife, she would compliment her husband publicly. Oh, I have the best husband. Oh, he's so handsome. And you know how the male ego would feel after that. Ooh. Let me work harder. So even from the ordinary point of view, in ordinary affairs, we should be grateful. And of course, dealings with devotees, even if your husband or wife, even if the devotee is your husband or your wife, still, they're devotees, and you should show gratitude. It's very miserable to be around ungrateful people, Whether it's in your own home or in this community of devotees, when there's lack of appreciation, lack of gratitude, everything becomes a little taut, becomes tense. But just some gratefulness, expression of gratefulness, can change night to day. So remember that. And by your expressing gratitude to someone, you inspire them to show gratitude to someone else. And so things start to expand. Other questions? Yes?
Krishna Maharaj, thank you for your class. Maharaj, you were saying how devotees sometimes they're fearful that everything will be taken away from them. I've read somewhere that Krishna takes away everything that comes in between him and his devotees that hamper the devotees to come.
If the devotee is fortunate, not everyone. Yashahamani grami harishe taddanam shanai. When I see that my devotee is attached to me, but there's some things that are getting in the way, I give him my special mercy. You see, Hari means one who takes everything away, but that's only half the meaning of Hari. The other half is, I reward him with ecstatic love for me. So you have to see the whole picture. So for special devotees who have caught Krishna's attention, he'll give that special favor to. Srila Prabhupada said that Krishna did that to him. So ordinarily, astrologers were telling him that he should have been one of the richest men ever in India, from the material point of view. But every time that opportunity was about to come to him, something happened. He said that's Krishna's special mercy. Krishna specially interfered. But this is not ordinary. So you want to convince Krishna to give you that special mercy? You're not sure, huh? Remember, Hare takes away these impediments and rewards you with ecstatic love. And in the core of your being, what you're crying out for is pure ecstatic love of God. Nothing else is going to satisfy you. And Krishna knows that. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, you were talking about forgiveness again, being grateful, but sometimes when we feel that maybe a devotee has been harsh towards us, it's still difficult to be genuinely happy and to be around them. How do we forgive genuinely?
To forgive means to understand that you've also made mistakes too. So even in basic Christian morality, they have the idea that forgive as you would like to be forgiven. So once you understand that you've made mistakes too, you're more prone to forgive others. But also, there's a more advanced way in bhakti, in Krishna bhakti, of understanding forgiveness. The devotee starts to think that although it seems obvious that you treated me badly, there must have been something in my own consciousness that brought that about. That's how a devotee thinks. Although it seems obvious that you spoke harshly or you mistreated me, somehow or other, there must be some defect in my consciousness in which unconsciously I influenced you to act in this way. That's how a devotee thinks. Let's be practical. You see, without forgiveness, it's impossible for a devotional community to proceed smoothly, because there's always going to be some misunderstandings. This is Kali Yuga. The nature of Kali Yuga is disunity. So it's a great miracle when people can come together in a lasting way. Because in Kali Yuga, everything is done to tear that apart. Therefore, in a mature devotee community, we have to learn how to forgive others for misunderstandings, miscommunications. I know one true story. The devotee is a temple president in the USA now. He originally was in Fiji. And when he was in Fiji, he had a multi-million-dollar business. He was Fiji Gujarati, and he was wheeling and dealing in, I think, maybe sugar cane or something like that, rice or whatever. So, dealing millions of dollars. And so, another devotee, obviously a neophyte devotee, became envious of him. And that neophyte devotee, obviously a very neophyte devotee, went to the bank where this other devotee was dealing with and told the bank, I know his financial situation. He doesn't have enough cash flow to pay all those loans that he's taken out. Because it's business, you know, you take out loans, make a profit off the investment, and then pay the loan back. And so he went to the bank and told the bankers that. And so the bankers called in all the loans all of a sudden. And they told the other devotee, you have 24 hours to pay all your loans, all your millions of dollars. 24 hours. We've heard that that your financial position is very shaky. So the devotee had to sell out everything. He was in such a tough situation. Just see, 1 minute you're super wealthy, making plans how to use the wealth in Krishna's service. Next minute your back is pressed against the wall and you've got to sell off all your assets overnight because the bank has called in all their loans. So this devotee lost a few $1 million and just lost all his prosperity. Had to live simply. Eventually, he went to the USA, became a very admired, successful temple president. Years later, he got a phone call. And it was this devotee who had ruined him. And the person confessed, because at that point, this devotee who was ruined, he didn't know who had gone to the bank and done this. He had no idea. So the devotee years later called up and confessed. I have something horrible to tell you, very ashamed. I've got to clear my conscience. I became envious of you 15 years ago. I was the one who contacted the bank and influenced them to call in all your loans. I know you lost millions of dollars. Right now I'm telling you. How can I atone for it? Name your amount. I'll write a check right now. Name your amount. I don't care what the amount is. Name it. But the devotee just told him, no thanks. I don't need your money. Hung up the phone. So I was discussing with this devotee, you may not have wanted the money, but you could have used it for the deity's service. No. I want nothing to do with him. I don't want his money. So I said, well, let's be practical here. The money belongs to Krishna. He said, name your price. He would have written out a check for $2 million. You could have built another temple. No. I won't stoop that low. I want nothing to do with his money. Well, whose money is it? Everything belongs to Krishna. So sometimes, due to pride, due to, we just do ridiculous things. But still, this devotee feels that way. He did the right thing. No, I just hung up the phone. No, thank you. What do you think? How many of you would approve? He hung up the phone and said, no, thank you. Raise your hands. How many of you would have said, yeah, you can fill out the check? How many don't know? The ladies say they don't know.
If he wanted to give, he could have given it himself to the temple or someone. Okay, if this guy is not taking, I will give it.
Well, try to understand. Obviously, this was a very, how do we say, it was a very neophyte devotee still. So it seems like he really wanted to get this off his chest, and he wanted personal forgiveness. Well, he said, I did this. I want to atone. I can't sleep at night anymore. It's been years, but I can't get this out of my mind. Tell me, name your amount. I'll cover your losses. What were your losses? I'll cover them. And the losses were a couple of $1 million. But this other devotee said, no, I don't need your money. What do you think? This is a real life example. Now remember, this devotee is a temple president in a big temple in the USA. I kept telling him, take the $2 million, give it to Mayapur, build another temple for your deities, do something. Buy 20 Sankirtan bands or something. He said, nope. I don't want his money. I don't want to be touched by his contaminations. So, if we don't know how to forgive, we can even become very impractical at times. Any other questions? Yes?
I express my gratitude for your perhaps moral tale and also your invitation for questions. How do those people who have almost impenetrable economic security view and perceive their spiritual figures, and more specifically, how do, for example, more concretely, people who have very secure materials for them to survive, how do they view about spiritual and religious figures? So, and also, how is it possible for people who are in poverty to live perhaps comfortably, or even though there is love from other religion or other source?
Well, let's look at the case of Kuber and Manigriva, the two sons of Kuber. Narada Muni, when he cursed them to become trees, Narada Muni explained what he was thinking. Narada Muni was saying that when you're very wealthy, it's generally very difficult for saintly persons to approach you because you're so proud. You isolate yourself from visitors. You only want to see aristocratic persons, other persons who have money. Just like today, if you want to go to the house of a very wealthy person, you know, there's a big gate around the house, there's a video camera, this, that, the other, you know. In India, you know, there'll be the chowkidars, the guards at the gate. So it's not easy for a saintly person to just walk in. So Narada Muni was thinking like that. These boys are so wealthy. Their wealth has made it very difficult for them to take advantage of spiritual opportunities. Whereas a poor person is always open to greeting saintly persons. Even if the poor person can just offer a glass of water or a straw mat to sit on. The door of the poor person is always open to saintly persons. And also, Narada Muni said, poor persons have more sympathy for the pains that others feel because they have felt the pain themselves. So therefore, these rich boys, I'm going to make them into trees, poverty-stricken trees, and in that way, they'll learn their lesson. So it is true that wealth can be a blinder. It can make you blind to spiritual opportunity. It's very true. I remember in secondary school, I was going to boarding school. In the US, they call them prep schools. And they're 99% most wealthy families in the USA send their kids there. But I was a scholarship student. So I was amazed. I would see these kids fighting with each other. Your father is worth 100 million. He's filthy rich. My dad is respectable. He's only worth 25 million. Just fighting with each other like that. I just couldn't understand this. And I also saw how unhappy they were. So from a young age, from the time I was 14, I saw all these wealthy kids so miserable. So I had that realization even as a teenager. I saw it with my own eyes. These boys were so unhappy. They didn't know what to do with their wealth. They were in such anxiety. Their parents had put so much pressure on them. You must get the top grades to go to the Ivy League schools. If you don't go to Ivy League school, you're finished. Like in India, you must go to IIT, otherwise your life is finished. So, in the States, it's like that. You must go to Ivy League school. Best is top Ivy League school. You must go to Harvard, Yale, Princeton. But okay, Columbia, Cornell, that will do. So the kids are under such pressure. Oh, such anxiety I saw. They weren't happy. So I saw that from a young age. I never forgot that. So Narada Muni, he explained that. This is why I'm going to curse these boys to take birth as trees. Their wealth has made them mad. I remember once a devotee asked Srila Prabhupada, he said, if India is the land of Krishna, why is it then that India is comparatively poor and the USA has so much money? What was Prabhupada's answer? Just wait. Things change so quickly in this world. I always ask, for example, maybe 70 years ago or so, how many of you would have wanted to live in Singapore 70 years ago? Oh, it was a hellish place. But this is the middle planetary system, so happiness and distress comes very quickly. Comes and goes very quickly. One day, a place is forsaken, forbidden. The next place is booming economically. Everyone wants to live there. I remember persons telling me about New Zealand, for example, which has very strict immigration laws. But there was a time in the 70s, people were telling me, a foreigner could just come on the boat, come off the plane, and just walk into any business and say, I want to work. And they say, okay, you stay in the country. I know a person like that. One American guy told me when he was 19, in the 1970s, he got off the plane in New Zealand and was traveling around with his backpack and just walked into a bank and said, I'd like a job. I said, sure. Where are you from? From the USA. Don't worry about it. You can stay. Now, that would never happen. So things changed all the time. One place is known as hellish. It becomes very sought after. A place that's heavenly becomes hellish. This is a material world. The laws of karma are operating. So that's why Prabhupada gave that answer. Just wait. You'll see what the future brings. It's like Australia is known as the lucky country until all the minerals run out. They're always making projections. 2 years. No, correction. New finds. New minerals supply has been found. No, just 2 years. China's given a warning. Australian economy should be based on something more than our buying minerals. What happens when the minerals run out and we don't buy anymore? That's the way of life in the material world. Whatever wealth is there changes hands so quickly. That's why there's so much anxiety in having wealth. But if you have the wealth of devotional service, then you have transcendental anxiety. How can I do this better for Krishna? I'm not doing enough for Krishna. That's not ordinary anxiety. That's not material anxiety. So let us all long for the wealth of devotional service. And we'll be happy to accept the transcendental, the spiritual anxiety that comes along with it. Krishna, how can I please you better? Another day, another night, and I haven't pleased Krishna enough. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.